Hi there, my name's Dan. I'm the paramedic, Miss Baker. I'll be taking care of you today. What seems to be the problem? Starbucks is out of pumpkin spice. Did you fall? Are you hurt? Your feelings are hurt because Starbucks is out of pumpkin spice? Okay. Hey Bill, this one's for you. It's BLS. Some mornings, there's just not enough coffee. Let's go check our truck. Let's go have a discussion. Hi there and welcome back. My name is Dan. Today we're going to talk about strategies in coping with stress and how I deal with stress. And with that being said, I am not a psychiatrist. I am not a psychologist. I am not a counselor. These are just my thoughts and my opinions on different ways to cope with stress, how I deal with stress, and what mistakes I've made dealing with stress in my career. So in the paper, it talked about some constructive ways of dealing with stress and some destructive ways of dealing with stress. At the top of the list, it's talking with colleagues. Sometimes after you've been on a bad call or a bad series of calls, sometimes they recommend that if you sit down and talk with your coworkers, maybe they can give you some insights on helping you deal with what you've just come across. It can be beneficial to you sometimes if you just get your frustrations or your emotions out in the air. But that's not one of the strategies or tactics that I use. And just because I don't see any benefits through it, I've sat through CISD, critical incident stress debriefings, and I don't think that has done me any good over my career, is talking with somebody because they don't know how I felt. Next on the list, it's thinking about positive benefits of work. Sometimes it's easy for us to forget why we're here, and that is to help people. That is to try to help people in their darkest hour, help people in their time of need. But sometimes we worry about taking care of other people and we forget to take care of ourselves. Sometimes when I go to work, I don't feel like I do anybody any good. Sometimes when I go to work, I feel like the only real positive benefit is sometimes we get free coffee. And the other benefit is I do get paid. But sometimes that helps people get through the stress they're dealing with at that time. Sometimes it doesn't, but it's a tool or a tactic that you might try to use. Next on the list is focusing on outside interests. Now that's a big one for me. That's something that I like to do. There's times when I get halfway through the shift and I'm thinking, oh, it's a really good day. I want to go out and fly my Phantom, or it's a really good day. I can't wait to get home to go take my dog for a walk. So that's definitely one of the things that I do, is if I'm halfway through a shift and things just aren't going my way, I start thinking, okay, now this is what I'm going to do when I get off work. I'm going to go home. I'm going to take my boots off. I'm going to get out of this outfit. I'm going to throw on some shorts. I'm going to throw on some t-shirt. I'm going to grab my dog, we're going to go walk in the park, and we're going to have a fun time. Or if it's sunny and it's a nice day, I just can't wait to get home to go outside and fly one of my drones. I can't wait to go home and try out something new with my camera. I can't wait to get home and try something different with my little smaller action cams. It just gives me an escape out of my office here, and it also just gives me a chance just to be me. And the next one on the list is thinking about my own family or thinking about your own family. And I don't see that as a way to relieve stress. I see that as a way to provide better care. If I'm taking care of somebody, for instance, that would have been my parents' age, I would treat them the way that I would want somebody to treat my parents. If it's the same age as my son, I kind of treat him the way that I would want to have somebody treat my son. So, with that being said, I don't see that as a stress reliever. I see it as a way of being a better provider. The next one on the list is looking forward to off-duty time, which kind of ties in with focusing on outside interest. When I am not at work, the last thing I think about is being at work. Again, those two kind of tie in together. The big thing is just to detach your work life from your home life. Sometimes I think I do a reasonable job of doing that. It's just a separation. The next one on the list is using off-color or dark humor and coping and being a coping mechanism. I'll be the first one to admit sometimes my humor is very off-color and very, very dark. That is a coping mechanism. There are certain things that I find humor in that I kind of laugh at myself a lot. I really laugh at myself a lot. And I try to find the humor in most situations that would probably mortify people. A dark sense of humor is probably one of my best coping mechanisms. Next on the list is using available mental health services. It can be a wonderful tool if it's available for you. It can be very helpful if that is something that's going to help you. In my personal opinion, and I know this needs to change, but I think that sometimes, and I feel that sometimes, it can be a sign of weakness. It's a stigma that is attached to you. If I would do it, I would feel like there is a stigma attached to me, and I feel like that stigma would follow me around. And I think that people would look at me different. They would look at me as being weak and unable to cope and unable to deal with things. So for that reason, I use other tools available, or I do other things that help me. I don't necessarily use mental health services. Again, my opinion, I am not a psychiatrist, I am not a psychologist, I am not a counselor. I just don't think mental health services is for me. Last on the list is talking with your spouse or your significant other. If you have a spouse that's strong enough to sit down and hear about everything that you did that day, great. If not, find another alternative, but don't close them out. Let them know that you just had a really bad day, and right now you just want 5 minutes to be alone and be by yourself and get your thoughts together. But don't shut them out. They are your support. They're there to help you, but just make them know that it's just a really crappy day and I just need 5 minutes and I'll be better. What I went over so far is considered constructive coping techniques with stress. Now we're going to talk about some of the destructive things that we do that can actually hurt ourselves or make ourselves worse. And I admit doing multiple of these things that can be destructive in your coping skills. One of the destructive coping skills is keeping your thoughts and feelings to yourself. I am guilty of that. I choose not to share things. I'm a very close person. I keep my feelings, I keep my thoughts very close inside of me. I do bottle them up. I guess I'm closed emotionally right now, and I think that's one of the walls that I've put up, and I do tend to keep people out. I have lots of acquaintances, but I probably have like 2, maybe 3 friends that I consider friends that I can just sit down and talk to. So I have a very close-knit circle of friends that I actually let my guard down and I let me be myself around. Because I know that the people that are in my circle aren't going to take advantage of me, and I know they have my back. And the next one ties into the first one, and that is avoiding conversations about calls. I'm guilty of that. I will talk about funny calls. I will talk about goofy things that's happened during the day. I avoid conversations about the bad ones, and I avoid conversations about the ones that I still carry with me. So one of the things that's always talked about and discussed about is if you know somebody in EMS, don't ask them what's the worst call you've ever been on, because it brings back memories. It brings back memories that we've either repressed or we've either dealt with, and then we have to talk about them again. Instead, why don't you ask them, what's the funniest thing you've been on? What's the goofiest thing you've seen? Next on the list is picking and choosing calls. Today I'm the only ambulance in the city that I work in, so I don't get a chance or I don't get a choice to pick or choose calls. The radio goes off and we respond. So I can't do that. I know in my past employment history, I know there have been trucks that dodged calls. I know there have been trucks that did not respond to calls. I know that happens, but that's a destructive technique because it just makes more work on your coworkers, and it just causes hard feelings with your coworkers. So I can see that being a destructive coping technique. Another bad coping technique is reducing your workload to the bare minimum. That just means where I show up right at time to start. I don't bother checking my truck. I don't bother checking the expiration date on my meds. I don't bother making sure I have a full tank of fuel. I don't bother checking the oil. I just kind of go through the motions. And I don't think that's really doing anything for you. Next on the list is consumption of alcohol. I maybe have 2 beers a month with a dinner. I don't consider that disruptive, but I have known people that just can't wait to start drinking when they finish their shift. That is a very destructive technique because it endangers the health of yourself. It leads to other problems, other issues. It could lead to alcoholism. I know that 1 or 2 people that I've worked with over my career had been alcoholics. They have both passed away. They really struggled to keep it together while they were at work. And the last one is engaging in risky behaviors. Behaviors that may cause yourself harm. For instance, driving aggressively, taking your frustration out on your car, driving way too fast, drinking and driving, abusing drugs. those are behaviors that can be risky. Definition of risky behavior is going out looking for trouble. Now let's say I've had a really lousy day. I've had horrible, awful calls. What do I do when I get home? I know it sounds strange. I know it sounds bizarre. But the first thing I do when I get home is, as soon as I get out of my car, I take my work boots off, I take my socks off, and I walk around in the grass. I feel the grass on my feet. It lets me know that I'm home. It lets me know that I don't have to be in medic mode. I know that I can just be me. And I know that sounds strange, and I know that sounds goofy, but that's one of the first things I do when I get home. The next thing I do is I go home, and my dog is at the door, ready to greet me, tail wagging, and I usually pet him, and I say, "He's a good boy." That helps some of my stress melt away too, is just petting my dog, being affectionate to my dog, working on training him, just being outside, going for walks with him. That's one of my best stress reliefs right there if I've had a crappy day. And then usually after I pet my dog, I hop in the shower, take a nice long hot shower, and that helps me. And then I usually fix dinner. I try to eat healthy, but sometimes it's just so tough. And then after dinner, I take my dog, we go down to the park and we walk, try to get a little bit of exercise, try to get a little bit of cardio. I think that helps as well. I think that helps me. And then after I walk, I do laundry or any other house chores that I need to do. And then I usually sit down and watch a little bit of TV, and I go to bed, and I get up the next day and do it again, do everything again. There are good days, there are bad days. The good days are more frequent than the bad days, but you have to know how to deal with the bad days to get to another good day. I had a call yesterday that kind of bothered me a little bit. I got dispatched to a female having a seizure. We get there and she does not have a history of seizures. She's never had a seizure as a child or as an adult up until yesterday. One of the potential things that can cause a seizure in an adult that's never had a seizure before could be a brain tumor. And I did get to follow up at the hospital. And this lady was younger than I am. And the CT did show that there was a mass in her head. And yeah, it did turn, it wasn't good news, but I hope that she's well. But that was one of the many calls that I did yesterday that just kind of bothered me. Never do anything that you wouldn't want to explain to the paramedics when you call 911. Peace. Thanks for watching today's. I have no idea what the topic of next week's will be, but we're going to keep going. Maybe I'll pick up 1 or 2 subscribers. Thanks for watching again.